From Toronto to Tokyo, and from Phonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player 2 novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player 2 podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert, Will, and the rest of the Gunters for this week's episode. Hello, Gunters. You are in the basement. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 0002 of the Ready Player 1 novel, Who Run Bartertown. Tonight's going to be an episode of primarily filled with just pop culture references, given that we've done all of the narrative from chapter 2 in the last episode. So if you've not had a chance to listen to that, go there and get caught up before you jump into this, or just hang out with us and do the pop. That's cool too. So we got quite a bit to talk about, including none other than the Thunderdome and Mad Max. So I'm pretty excited about that. And speaking of Mad Max and Thunderdome, someone that's very close to our hearts, who's currently not even paying attention and on his phone, is none other than Dr. Will 8-Bit. Will Wilkins, welcome to the show. What in the world is going on last minute over there?
Last minute, just reaching out to my fan base of 3 people.
So good. Tell them we all said hello.
I have done it. I've told them all the things that we're going to be covering today. I sent them the Cliff's Notes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing pretty good. This was a fun episode to do. I think they're all pretty fun to do, especially when we get into the research, but particularly when we get to like Spies Are Like Us and some of the other ones. So I'm pretty excited about them.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, let's do this. Maybe we'll get out of here in like 2 hours. Who knows?
Unlikely, sir.
Not
Have you
happen.
been here before? Welcome to the basement, sir. Where if we literally had one topic, it's 4 hours. We're doing this.
Could be. Okay, well, we're gonna kick things off with a movie that's close and dear to your heart, as well as mine. But this is Goodwill Hunting. I'll give you the reference here. I'd selected Sean Maguire, Robin Williams' character in Goodwill Hunting. His familiar demeanor, his warm smile, and his fake Boston accent made our sessions feel like I was talking to an old friend, even though he usually only said things like, yes, go on, and how does that make you feel, Wade? So, Will, take it away for Goodwill Hunting.
So, like you mentioned, this is a film that is near and dear to my heart. What a great month in cinema this was in 1997. I mean, look at the films that came out this month. We had As Good as It Gets, Titanic, Amistad, Jackie Brown, and of course, this film, which culminated in Academy Awards for Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for the writing of the film, and of course, Robin Williams for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah,
this is so. Premise of this movie is pretty straightforward. A janitor at MIT is actually a genius. This story of self-discovery told through the therapy from Mork and his girlfriend Minnie Driver and his best friend Matt Damon. It's funny. We say this in jest, but Robin Williams on a number of interviews said after he won the Academy Award, people were asking him, "Oh, what's it like to win an Oscar for this film?" And he said, it's interesting. For like, there was like a 2.5 week period where people were like, "Hey, great job on the film. This is a fantastic film." And then 2 weeks later, people were like, "Hey, how's it going, Mark?" So you just kind of deal with it.
I wonder if he ever shed that. He probably never did shed that his entire life, did he?
No, I think Robin Williams and I'm a huge fan, as you know.
Yeah.
And Robin Williams suffered from what I think a lot of people do, including myself to some degree when we were younger, at least when I was younger, is it was a defensive mechanism, right? Our sense of comedy is a defensive mechanism in the sense that you have that whole Tears of a Clown sense where you are trying to pretend you're happy so that you can kind of avoid the things that are tragic that are going on in your life. And I know that I'm not unique in that. There's other people in their lives that went through the same types of period or same periods within their lifetime. And Robin Williams just unfortunately suffered that through the majority of his professional career, where, the comedy almost served as a distraction.
Yeah.
And as we talk through this film, I think we're going to talk about a number of those things, because this film is meaningful to me in a number of areas, and not least of which is the relationship of both Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in this film, and of course the relationship they have with the greater group. Because I think if any way that I was blessed in my lifetime, and this is real talk between us beyond the podcast, it's the fact that I've had you to carry me through my life experiences, right? You have been more than a friend to me in my life. I consider you a brother, and I have been blessed to have you there. Like, it didn't matter where I was in my life. And I've always felt the same from you, that there are times where I carry you and I've needed you to carry me, and we've always been there for one another. And these two guys have had the same type of relationship. I think it's why, in large degree, this movie is so meaningful to me.
Yeah, no, and I would I don't want to like be cheesy, or I'd reciprocate that. Like, when I saw this movie, this relationship was, meant something to me, and I was not joking when I said it's near and dear to my heart because of the same reason. I did see Us. I mean, we were both we were what, in our early 20s when this movie came out.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, it resonated really well with me, and especially with you. And I think you had just left right around this time. It'd been a few years, I guess, at that point. But anyways, yeah, I would agree. So thank you.
Yeah. So, Matt Damon made a comment when he was talking about this film about how their relationship with one another, they knew that it didn't really matter what they did in life, what direction they took, and that their past, they expected that at some point would just separate and divide. But ultimately, they knew they would always be there for one another. And there have been periods in our life where, you and I were separated for some time, and it didn't matter. Like, the next time we talked, it was like we had just talked the day before, even if it had been 6, 8, 12, 10 months between those times we talked to one another. So I love that about this movie. I think they, as you know, this movie was written by both of them famously. Most people would assume that Matt Damon was the person who predominantly wrote this film, and that would absolutely be true. Mm-hmm. Matt Damon was originally conceived of this with Ben Affleck early on in his career, and then in his 5th year in Harvard, he was tasked with writing a one-act play, which ultimately became Goodwill Hunting. But he did reach out to Ben Affleck to help him write this part of the film, write the character that ultimately defined him in the film, and helped him bring authenticity to the film itself, which included bringing Casey Affleck on, who has been a notable actor throughout. So Casey Affleck, when this film was made, wasn't actually represented by an agent. So it was literally
this dude's brother,
Matt Damon, trying to convince his friend's brother to be in this film. And at the time, Casey was trying to make a documentary about the making of a Hollywood film. So he wanted to be a documentary filmmaker about the making of the film, and wasn't overall thrilled with the idea of being in the film. So if you watch this film, almost all of the lines that you see by Casey Affleck, most of which are memorable, were all improvised or written, by him on the set, including, my boy's wicked smart, which is my favorite line in this movie.
Wicked smart.
Yeah, I think the other part of this film that makes it great is that it's not just about the quality of the film, but what the film means for a couple of friends, both when it was being made, and then what the film means at today to mm-hmm. both of these guys. Yeah. And both of those messages are pretty impressive. So yeah, I've got some slides we can go through. There's tons of memorable. This movie, from my perspective, is probably one of the best written films. It is not a side piece that these guys were nominated and ultimately won for Best Original Screenplay.
Right, this it was well deserved. Yeah,
exactly. This film is authentic on a number of levels. I know there's a lot of criticism for this film because it has like 154 F-bombs that are written throughout the script, but ultimately
it's Boston. What do you
and that's how we talk. Like, even us, that's how we talk. So going through this, Albert, I was like looking through the film, and I'm like, are there particular scenes or any of these that resonate with you and really give you a sense of like the identity of who these characters are?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and nothing specific, but definitely the relationship between the two. And you've got some really great moments in here. Just even the stuff that's like the subtle things that they do, and you can tell that that was what was really authentic about this movie. Is you could tell these guys had a relationship. It's much like when you see an actor and an actress on screen, and you know there's chemistry off screen. It does, in my opinion, most of the time, translate into a better performance, a more authentic, realistic performance for those two if they are in a relationship. And very much similar here. You've got two people that are very close. They grew up together. They were both vested in this movie in a lot of different ways. They knew it in and out. I know there was some things that went back and forth about, they were going to try to get they were going to try to get other actors, and eventually they were able to get into the movie as the main actors. But that relationship's really good. Robin Williams' lines and the whole story of, farting in bed, and all that stuff is just super authentic. And as a younger, I didn't realize, that stuff didn't really resonate with me, other than the fact that it was an amazing performance and I could get it. But you get, as you get older, and you've got loved ones, that stuff really does make a difference. And he does a really good job. And then you think about this, it's coming from two kids, writing about this stuff. And I say kids, but two younger people writing about this stuff. And there's some pretty deep emotional, threads that are running through this movie, both through Will's character and then Robin Williams' character as well.
No, you're absolutely right. For theater guys that are out there, this is probably one of the best films for what I would consider, like, amongst the theater nerds, male duets, because this was originally written as a one-act play, like I mentioned, and then eventually evolved into What is Good Will Hunting. But you have incredible duets, especially the bench scene between Robin Williams and Matt Damon, which is incredibly powerful. But even some of the acting that you see from Ben Affleck, and I've always felt bad for Ben Affleck in the making of this film, because neither one of these guys were accidentally stars or accidentally wrote about this. These guys were committed to the craft from a very early age. And as they went through this, you had a sense that Ben Affleck was typecast into, he was the dumb hanger on of his, his smart friend. And that really wasn't the case. They were both collaborating, throughout the entire process of this film.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this is, in my opinion, just emotionally, it's a great film. It gets quite a bit of criticism, probably more criticism than most films get today, about how it holds up. And there's a number of reasons for this, but even Matt Damon has said that this is a tragic film to look back on a number of levels, not least of which is the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, but also what it meant to the actors and the actors that participated in it.
Yeah.
But what, like we talked about earlier, probably what resonates with me most is that this is really just the story of two friends making a film. And as you know, I've always gravitated toward writing. It is literally the only thing left on my bucket list in my life, which is not a short bucket list. It is the only thing left I have yet to accomplish, which is being a published author.
Yeah.
So for me, I get this. I get the value of having a friend that you love meet and work through this. And it's exactly the dynamic you would expect. So when they first met, Ben Affleck was 8 years old, and Matt Damon was 10 years old. Matt Damon's mother was a professor of educational studies at the time. Ben Affleck, both of his parents were janitors at Harvard University. And Ben Affleck's mother eventually became a teacher and started working her way up that way. But it was very a white collar versus blue collar sense all the way through college. So at the time that in their early years, Ben Affleck was thinking about doing some childhood acting. Matt Damon was already doing commercials at the time, and the two became very close friends. And then at one point when they were kids, Matt Damon actually got jumped by a group of kids, and Ben Affleck jumped in and protected him from that, even though he was a younger kid. And at that point, it kind of solidified the relationship. And I will say that my experience is that people who are best friends always have some moment of tragedy or conflict that kind of solidify the relationship between the two. And after that, they just kind of...
What was ours?
So as I recall...
I'm trying to remember now. Did we
So
have
as I
one?
recall, me and you were not friends initially. So you and I
Was it the
don't know
gay
why.
bar? Was it the gay bar incident?
No. So that was definitely
Anybody that's
a
listening now,
memorable moment.
anybody that's listening now is like, whoa, because
Yeah, I
there's
don't.
no context there. I think. Well,
There's no context. I do remember the location was called the New Zoo, but
I thought it was
that
the
was not
fertile
it.
turtle.
No, it was a New Zoo.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
confident of that. It involves my older brother who was DJing at the time. It's a long story, but
All right, sorry.
I would say you and I were really on our story. For those that are from San Antonio or understand the public transportation system, I think started on the 613 bus. The 613 bus was a via bus route that ran from both of our homes to Ingram Park Mall. And both you and I were, eventually, after several transfer slips and the same 40 cents, you and I actually didn't get along. There was actually a bunch of crap talking the very first time we met. And it looked like it was going to be a physical confrontation at one point, which I was confident that I would lose in. And
behave. You've been drinking. Come on.
Look, man, I was a proper mathlete. Like, let's be real, right? Like us growing up, let's be real, right? So I was always that dude. I was always the academic decathlon type. I was always that guy. You played football. Like, I never played football. Like, I know that's shocking to the majority of people, but you were a sports guy at the time, right? You were far more popular than I was in terms of the cliques that we hung out with. And for some reason, you converted to the dark side and started gravitating toward that. And then we found we had a lot of common interests, which is interesting because a lot of the common interests that we had are the same common interests that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck had. Both of them were avid D&D players back in the day. They loved RPGs. They loved classic cinema. They loved the theater. They loved Shakespeare. Music. They were guys that shared those same interests early on in their relationship, which was similar to us. Me, where I was open about it, much like, and just so you know, I am Matt Damon in this relationship. And Ben Affleck, who was the cool kid who really didn't have to, but ended up working with it anyway. So these guys have kind of covered each other through their entire careers, and both of them have been through a lot, right? So
that's so funny. I used to go to your door and just check to see if you'd come out every morning and hope and pray that one day you wouldn't come out that door. So you got to see the movie if you get that.
That was awesome. That is one of the best duet scenes. Is like, the happiest part of my day is walking to the door and hoping that, when I knock on it, you're not going to answer.
Not going to answer because you
that's
picked up and left, which you did do.
Fantastic.
But go on. Sorry.
I did, but it was the military. It was far less impressive. So even in their college careers, right? So you've got Matt Damon, who ends up going to the University of Harvard in his fifth year. Harvard. He writes this one. Harvard goes this one-act play. And then Ben Affleck ends up going to the University of Vermont. But still, even though they had these different lives, they still shared a lot of time together. Both of them ended up at one point sharing a joint checking account. They worked together. They lived together a number of times. And at the end of the day, Matt helped Ben work through his relationship issues and some of his addiction issues, which were difficult and is probably hard to do in the context of Hollywood. I think you and I have talked about this before, even when we're getting ready for this show, is that, my thought was always between the both of us, I do believe that you and I have a great story to tell. And I do believe that we could have written a script that would be worthy of people writing. I don't know that, or producing. I don't know that would ever rise to this level, but at the same time, I do think that we had a great story in there somewhere. And this story is incredibly important. I mean, if you look at what it meant for the people that were involved, Robin Williams, his first and only Best Supporting Actor Oscar win for this film, took an incredible pay cut. So Robin Williams at the time was coming off of making the movie Flubber, which he made $20 million.
He made a ton of money off of that movie.
Yeah. So at the time, that was his going rate, was $20 million a film. He only made $5 million off of this film, although he ended up, in retrospect, making a lot more money because he was smart enough to build.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made this escalating deal that said after 60 million, he would start making a percentage of returns. So he probably ended up making that. If you this slide and some of the images I'm showing, Gus Van Zant directed this film, but this film was really pushed forward by Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Right. So Kevin Smith was a huge fan of Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck was in a number of his movies before, most notably Chasing Amy.
Didn't they want him to direct the movie at one point, Smith?
Yeah, they did. And Kevin Smith was really cool about it. His position was, no, you're going to want somebody good to do this.
Right. Yeah, not me. I'm not the guy.
Yeah, but he did go push it out there. He was the one that presented the script to Harvey Weinstein that ultimately got Gus Van Sant involved. And that's the director that both Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wanted the entire time. In fact, there's an incredible scene in the movie where they're talking about this painting that sits in Robin Williams' character's office. And it's a painting of a boat that was actually painted by Gus Van Sant.
Oh, wow. So, really?
Yeah, he painted that. So it's interesting as I look back at the film and you hear some of the interviews that are done by Matt and Ben. It's bittersweet because they committed so much of their life to making this film, and it almost gives me pause about the fact that you and I would ever make a film together or make a story or write a book together or any of these things. And it's so difficult for him to watch. He says, I'm so challenged by this, first and foremost, because of Robin Williams' death. Right. So Robin Williams' death makes it hard for him to go back and look. And he was so grateful that Robin Williams was in this film. And so when Stugart's doing the film with Robin Williams, when they're doing the first scene that they're filming, both Matt and Damon cried that entire scene to think that these words that they wrote over time were being performed by these two incredible actors. To them, it was surreal that they were making it. And now to look back in retrospect and to see that this was considered one of Robin's greatest works and he's no longer with us makes the movie sadder on some level. In fact, the bench scene where they filmed the bench scene is probably even more impressive because when they made that scene in the movie, Robin Williams was a huge star. So there was over 33,000 people that were watching them film this scene. And so it's a great job of cinematography to show that they made it look so intimate. And both of the actors did a great job of making the scene feel intimate when in fact there were thousands of people
watching
were watching this scene at the time.
Hey, let me kind of pause you real quick. I just want to ask your opinion of Robin Williams real quick. Do you think this is like it? Because to me, it has been maybe his best role ever. He's had some pretty good ones before, but do you put that up there? This role as one of the best, if not the best he's ever done in a, and I don't mean comedy. I want to be clear about it. I'm talking about like dramas, and he's done a fair share of them, whether it was creepy dramas versus sentimental drama kind of pieces or roles. But where does this one fit for you?
So I look at it the same way, and this might be a bit more introspective than most people would be, but this speaks to me on a number of levels, right? I have always tried to be, when we were growing up and we were friends, I always try to be the funny guy.
Yeah.
Right. But ultimately that funniness is hiding things. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult for, someone who has reasons for being reserved that way about being vulnerable, the difficulty of being vulnerable. And Robin Williams really projected somebody who was being honest about things, that there's a difference between being intelligent and someone being emotionally grounded. They're two far different things. And I think that's why he was willing to take the pay cut for this role, is that he recognized that there was something special in this, that being the one who is the teacher, the guy who's being the psychologist, doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to learn from other people.
Yeah.
And I think all of us have that in our lives where we want to teach, but in some cases we're just too affront to learn from others. It's
right.
Yeah, it's terrible.
No, I would agree. And that is one of the themes of the movie is, he, as much as he knows, as wise as he knows, as many life experiences as he's had, he's still learning from Will, and Will's the one that calls him out on a couple things. Primarily, hey, he's never really dealt with the loss of his wife, and it took a kid to kind of bring that out into him. But yeah, I mean that kind of goes with teaching, right? We learn the most from those that we teach, and that's always been the case. It always will be the case.
Yeah.
There's but you've got Lars Ulrich here. Didn't he steal his girlfriend or wife or something like that? I remember there was a
Yeah, so I
deal
put
there?
this in there for the benefit of one of my friends at the office who is a huge Metallica fan, and I hate Metallica, right? So I love their music, right? Let's be clear.
Okay,
I love their
okay.
music.
I was gonna say what?
I love their music. My problem with it is the whole Napster thing, right? When
Oh yeah,
Metallica filed suit against Napster for
pretentious rock band, metal band. Yep.
yeah, like the least rock and roll thing you can do, in my opinion, is to file suit. Don't act like you're all gangster and then sue people for freely like you should be on board with that. But anyway, so Matt Damon was dating, what was that lady's name that he was dating at the time?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
but I just know that was I guess after they broke up, I think Lars swept in or something, or was there something going on before that,
or maybe at the same time that was going on.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, and so ultimately Matt Damon ends up hanging out, building a relationship with Minnie Driver. And I don't find Minnie Driver attractive at all, just real talk. She's got like the same jawline to me. And I'm sorry, Minnie, if you're listening to this. You got like the same jawline as Howie Long.
She's not.
She's not listening. No, she's not. She's not at all. Like, she's an incredibly talented actress. I can't even go through, the great films that she did.
Yeah.
But it's one of the bittersweet things for this film that he points out as he's making it. And it doesn't stop there. Obviously, the Harvey Weinstein thing has kind of drawn a cold shadow over this movie because it's the very first thing that you see when you're watching the film. It's the first thing that shows up.
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't like that. And then are you familiar with the song Miss Misery that's featured in this film? It's the last song that plays as they're driving off. And there's a picture of Elliott Smith here. And so Elliott Smith was someone that Gus Van Sant listened to routinely and said, hey man, there's something about his music and about the way he's connecting to the messaging about love and how difficult it is for people to love in his music. So he had selected a couple of songs of his to appear in the movie, including the one that runs at the closing credits. And he ended up passing in 2003. And Matt Damon points to that as another reason why this film for him is difficult to watch.
Wow.
And to me, it's almost tragic, right? You have this movie that they spent the better part of a decade dedicating their lives to bring to the silver screen. And it was hugely successful and they got everything they wanted out of the film. And then 20 years later, they look back at it and it's tainted by, the death of these stars and, tragic events that have occurred. And of course, the controversy and criminal actions of some of their producers that they regret and broken relationships. And ultimately, to me, it just points back to the same thing that this film is supposed to be, which is an accurate reflection of life. I mean, this film is the most Bostonist film that's ever been Bostoned, right? I think if you looking forward, Ben Affleck has mastered Bostonian filmmaking to the next level. He has done it. Like, there's a point. There's a point in the film where they say, "Yeah, we ran into a Barney," right? Like the most of us don't even know what that means. But a Barney is basically someone who's going to Harvard. This film has 154 F-bombs. Originally, they were trying to make this film PG-13, but they said PG-13 ratings only allow you to have 3 F-bombs. You need to remove about 150 of them.
So they said, F that.
And you get there. And that's what they said. Yeah, man, it's not going to be that.
Right.
And then, of course, there's all the non-rhotics, what we're talking about, which is the Bostonian vocal inflection that removes R's after a vowel. It's most commonly heard so have you heard any of these Boston kind of acting things where you sit there and go, I'm going to park the car in Harvard Yard.
Yes.
Right.
At Target.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
Another great example is when people say, I I put my car keys in the car keys, right? Like khakis and car keys sound exactly right. Same way. But there's a bunch of other colloquialisms that are used in Boston that aren't used elsewhere in the United States, except here in Texas. Like there's always that whole, what do you call like a long sandwich? So in Texas, we typically call them subs, just like Bostonians, but other people call them hoagies or heroes. We don't typically use that language.
Heard of that.
Do you ever use hoagies or heroes?
Nope.
Or grinders?
Everything's a sub.
Yeah, everything's a sub.
Just like everything's a Coke.
I don't know why, but they also refer to convenience stores as spas, like SPAS spas. I have no idea why, but that's the case. Just like if you add like chocolate or any kind of sprinkles to ice cream, they call them jimmies. I have no idea why. It's just
I
like
thought that was a cigar or cigarette.
What, a jimmy?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
I don't know. I'm out
the
of
Brits
my,
call it a
my
fag.
Well, we know that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you knew that, but
I did know that one.
Congratulations. And they refuse to say cheesesteak. They say like steak and cheese for
steak
that.
And cheese, yeah.
Yeah. But
cool.
Overall, highly recommend this film. I will say that the bar scene, like the famous bar scene, was actually filmed in the bar it was intended to be. Robin Williams went to the bar and said, look, we're not going to build a set for this. We are literally filming this bar in this scene. And they did.
And they're probably better for it, too. So
yeah, well played. So this movie, I can't say enough about it. I couldn't talk about it long enough, but I probably have.
But you don't have to take my word for it.
Dun-dun-dun.
Okay. Good job. It's quite a bit. And by the way, if you get a chance, if you're not a big fan of Minnie Driver's movies, I recommend Everything I've Got in My Pocket for her album, which came out in 2004. I happen to really like that one a lot.
What is that? Is that she like a musical album?
Yeah. You didn't know she did that?
Here.
She's got several.
No.
Yes.
No.
She's got a best of, dude. How do you not?
I got a best of, and I don't do nothing but karaoke in my garage. That doesn't mean.
Yeah, she's got quite a few hits, man. I can't believe.
No, calm down. You are loose with the word hits.
I'm real loose.
I didn't even know she was a singer. You're like, loose. She's got tons of hits.
Everything I've Got in My Pocket is probably like one of the best songs. But then she's got Hungry Heart, which has got Bruce Springsteen on there. And to be fair, okay, so I bought that album when it came out because I kind of had a thing for her. At that time.
That's terrible.
I know, I'm sorry. But and then Deep Water is another good one. And then she had let me look this up now. I don't remember how many albums she had. Maybe 3 or 4?
I'm on it, sir. She has released 3 albums, 2004, 2007, 2014, which is only one more album than she has voice roles in video games.
Oh, look at that.
She's only got 2 singles, both of them off of her album, Everything I've Got in My Pocket.
That's what I'm saying. It's probably the best album, arguably.
Right. So I just want you to know that if the average man plays a game called Everything I've Got in My Pocket, you're going to want to call the Vice Unit. That's not an appropriate name for a man to have.
Or not, yeah. Okay. So, I do like her music. All right, we're going to talk about Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, although I thought we would just kind of take it one step further and talk about social media since it's so prevalent in the novel, and we've had our decline on the show talking about social media and some of the aspects there. So I don't want to get too deep into this because, we've got a lot of other fun stuff to talk about. But I thought we would start at least by talking about Facebook, okay? And the quote, where did I put that quote? Holy bananas. I hope I got it on here, and I don't. All right. I'll pull it up here in just a minute, but
no, I'll do it while you're talking.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about Facebook. So Facebook, for those of you who don't know, was started in 2004, and it was created by Mark Zuckerberg, who you see in the bottom left-hand corner. Those are images of what he looked like when he was, in 2004. Originally, it was called Face Smash, and that was in 2003 while he was a student at Harvard University. And it was really supposed to be like do you remember the Hot or Not website that was out in the early 2000s?
I was married at the time, so of course not.
Well, anyway, so you'd go to this website and people would post pictures and you could rate them like hot or not. And that was really it. I mean, it's creepy. It didn't do anything else. I mean, there wasn't like a social, like a social interaction component to it or in any
But
way.
isn't that just the front end to Tinder today?
It is today, yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
Tinder took it to a whole nother level.
Tinder's front end is basically hot or not,
right?
And then they add the connect component to it.
Yep, that's exactly it. But this was really a one-trick pony. Oh, go ahead. What's the quote?
Okay, most of the early social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter had migrated into the Oasis shortly after it had launched, and they all still existed there today in your Mead feed, the consolidated social media feed timeline built into every user's account.
Thank you. Well done.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then in 2004, he launched the Facebook, which you can see Face Smash up here, the logo I've got there. And then 2004, 2005, that's when the Facebook came out. And it was really just supposed to be a college Facebook, which is a real thing, Facebook. That was a way to, it was a printout with people's faces on there so that you could put a name to a face at the university. They wanted to move this online, and so he was like, hey, I can do this, no problem. I'll create a website, and eventually that's what became Facebook. There were also, there were supposed to be some interactions there. There was going to be like a social media component to it as well, which is what he ended up doing. And from there, it took off. And we're not going to get into the history of all that because I think it's probably better to talk about some of these other things. Currently, Facebook has 2.8 billion people. They are the number one social media platform out there, 2.8 billion subscribers. How about that? Some of these social media platforms, obviously, you can go to them, but you may not be able to see content, or you may be limited in what you can do if you're not a subscribed or registered member. So 2.8 registered. There was a movie out there, The Social Network, directed by one of my favorite directors all time, David Fincher. Highly recommend that movie for everything that the movie's talking about, but also the movie direction, his direction itself is just phenomenal. Love him.
Do you think that's an accurate depiction? So I think The Social Network, to a large degree, kind of defined who he was, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Do you think it's an accurate portrayal of who he was as a person?
I don't know. I would say, I would say aspects of it are. It's hard to gauge things these days with some of the stuff that's going on with him and some of the things that he's saying. And it's like, I don't know, people change. He was very young at this time. So from that perspective, I think it was probably portrayed accurate as a stamp in time, right? Is he that today? I don't think so. I don't know what he is today. I don't follow him that closely, to be fair.
I do. I follow the memes anyway. Like the irony is that he has become a product of the social media that he created, right? Like you are the output of your own input. You have been, relegated to being a caricature of who you really are. And that in large degree is because of the medium that you created for people to do so. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, it is. It's like that quote from Batman, right? Where you just either you die trying or you become the thing that you're trying to fight. Kind of thing.
Wow, nicely done. Hey, nice loop into later discussion.
The Batcave. Yeah, when we get to the Batcave here.
So that was originally Batman and the Batcave. That can't be done, sir. Just so you know, in a 3-hour show, you cannot discuss both of these topics.
I felt the same way about another topic. Which was it? There was something. Well, with social media, honestly, I mean, we could take any one of these and turn it into a 3-hour show, right. Especially like Twitter. But
yeah, so, there is literally multiple podcasts called the Batcave.
And all they do is talk about Batman and the Batcave. Yeah,
indeed.
Okay, YouTube started in 2005, and we've covered this before. We did it when we did it in one of the episodes. You and I will towards the end of the year. So I won't get into a lot of that stuff, but we did cover the three gentlemen there. So Chad Hurley, Stephen Chen, and Jawed Karim, I guess. They were all employees of PayPal. Decided to start this video streaming service where people could upload videos, and there was it was really supposed to be kind of like a dating service or that kind of thing, and it ended up turning to be just anything, right? They just wanted to get videos up, and that's kind of what spawned it. They've got nearly 2 billion subscribers, registered users, which is pretty high. So, and I'll when we get to the very end here, I'll show you kind of where they stack comparatively speaking. And then, interesting enough, because of COVID, the numbers for 2020 have just recently come out here in January. And right now, these are the top 3 YouTube accounts that have the most subscribers. So you've got T-Series, which is number 1 at 170 million. The next closest is PewDiePie at 109. So there's a huge gap there in terms of how many subs. Now, to be fair, T-Series is like the only, I'm not gonna say I'm exaggerating, but the only like way to watch music or movies or any of the big blockbuster stuff in India. And so they've got just the raw numbers of the Indian population backing up T-Series. Not to say the content's not bad. I mean, I was actually listening to music videos today, but that's why they have 170 million. PewDiePie is the only, I guess he's the highest person, the person with the most subs. It's just kind of like independent. I've come out here and made a YouTube channel, but his numbers are falling. In fact, he took a year off or several months off last year, all of like 2020. And so he did lose some subs at that point. There are some people that have made some big jumps, like who's in third place. And the number of YouTube subscribers that have subscribed to these shows where actors or the YouTube stars are under the age of like 10 is crazy right now. They've seen massive jumps because of COVID, right? All the kids are home. So what do? They watch things like Cocomelon. And Cocomelon is now at 104 million. They weren't even really on the radar, and they were on the charts, but they weren't on the radar in terms of making a huge jump just 2-3 years ago. So this is all something that just happened recently and very steadily, I might add as well. So
yeah, so you nailed it, right? So T-Shirts is really, it's not YouTube produced content. It's Indian content being made available via YouTube in the absence of streaming services like, I don't know, Netflix and those likes that aren't really tied to that kind of thing. It is fascinating. What I always found fascinating about YouTube is that it's a business model that created itself. The creators didn't build a business model. The users built the business model for it, and they just adopted it because it made sense for them to do so. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and they've it's very similar to, like, let's say you just took one of the major networks. ABC decided, well, of course they're plugged in with Disney, but if ABC or one of the other big networks decided, we're just going to move everything to online and generate revenue through Google ads and that sort of thing, it's kind of essentially the same thing. You'd have a ton of people subscribe because and it's free, so why not, right? There's no charge to subscribe. You've just got to suck it up and watch all the commercials that come on. Interesting also, we got the latest information on who made the most money in 2020. So the highest paid YouTubers, and there's not a direct correlation between number of subs and the amount of money made. So that bodes, or that has some interesting aspects as well. But Dude Perfect is at number 3. So have you ever seen these guys? They go out and do these like crazy challenges, and there's apparel and stuff that they sell, right? And so
corny.
Once you add all that in, they netted $23 million last year with 57 million subscribers. So they're not even like I think they might be in the top 20. I don't think they're in the top 10, at least not for 2020 because of all the kids that jumped in here. So yeah, 23 million. You've got Mr. Beast, Jimmy Donaldson, who does these like different challenges is kind of what he does. He donates a lot of his money though to charities, which is awesome. But he has 47 million subscribers, but netted $24 million. Again, these are numbers, the amount of money they earned from YouTube alone and endorsements because of the commercials and any products they sell just last year alone, right? So they're making more money than these top level, executives at some of these high-end companies and by quite a bit, as I would say. And then finally, you've got Ryan. And Ryan is a 9-year-old boy. If you've ever seen Ryan's World, turn on any YouTube channel, go out to Nickelodeon. He's got a show out there. He's got a toy line. He's got a video game. He's got his own channel. He's got his own theme song, logo, you name it. He's netted $29.5 million as the number one moneymaker last year with only 41 million subscribers as well. And I say only, but comparatively speaking, that's quite a bit of money. So
Albert, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to run through like my top 5 YouTube channels. Are you a huge YouTuber? Do you go out and like watch a bunch of channels, subscribe to them, watch their new content? Are there any channels that you are absolutely married to that you love watching video content from?
I only, and this may sound crazy, I don't really watch a lot of YouTube at all.
Wow.
I couldn't even tell you, like, there's a couple channels that I'll go to watch videos on outdoor survival tips. And it sounds weird, but trust me, I'm really into the outdoor stuff. My favorite ones are when they go out with a camera and it's all primitive camping. And I mean really primitive. They go out with a backpack, a knife, some basic string and stuff like that, and they build their huts and everything, and build their stand-ups and all that within a week, and they film how everything goes for that week. And that's really the extent. I don't really watch any YouTube. I know there's a lot of great Star Wars YouTube channels out there. I don't watch any of those as well. I think it's mostly because of time, though, and that tends to be the thing with me. There's a lot of interest that I have. I don't have enough time. But what do you watch?
So I'm the opposite. I think it's because what I think makes YouTube diverse, what makes YouTube ultimately kill all the other networks is the diversity in content, right? There's something out there that you're going to love. For me, I don't know if you've heard of this channel, but the Basement RPO is pretty good. They put out good content. It's erratic, but it's not bad.
The Cantina cast too, by the way. I just want to plug those guys. They're really great. Did a good job last week on the Light of Jedi. So, but yeah, please go on.
So, I'm obsessed with conspiracy theory. So I love Simon Dan. Simon Dan is a flat earth conspiracy debunker.
Debunker. I thought
he's a debunker.
Okay.
So, but I love it. I cannot get my brain past the people who genuinely believe that the earth is flat. Like, as a proper science nerd, that it blows my mind. 74 Gear is a great channel. That's basically a pilot of a 747 who talks about what it's like to be a pilot, tells stories of when he's on the road, and then he does movie reviews of the accuracy of those films. Probably the oldest YouTuber I watch is Crazy Russian Hacker. I love his videos. They are always down to earth. He's always like testing like freaking Amazon crap that he gets in the mail at this point. Coffee Chess, because I'm a chess guy. It's just people playing chess on the street. My favorite reaction videos are by No Life Shack. No Life Shack is the best at reviewing or just reacting to videos. He is freaking hilarious. Highly recommend that you look at him. On the nerd side of me, the Gaming Historian has an exceptional challenge, and I also our channel, and I like Jelly's Marble Runs also. And that is a guy who just builds.
I've seen those.
Yeah, have you seen those?
Yeah,
dude, I can't stop. They're so therapeutic.
He does a really good job at them too. Like he's got all the graphics, and he's got a great commentator voice, a color commentator the entire time. It's great stuff.
He does. And of course I watch Powerful JRE, so all of the Joe Rogan Experience I watch as well. But those are probably my go-tos. But it's not uncommon within House Wilkins for the family just to sit down for the entire evening and watch YouTube videos, just like traditionally people would watch
television,
regular program television.
Let's all gather around TV and watch YouTube.
Yeah, watch fails.
Yeah. There's okay, let's talk about Twitter just briefly here. So they've got a marginally lower number than the other ones. They're at 350 million. That's nothing to be ashamed about. But 350 million users, started by Jack Dorsey, who you see in the bottom left-hand corner. That's a picture of him in 2006. He looks a lot like this, just homeless now these days. It was originally created to be an SMS-based media communication tech or communication and collaboration website where somebody could essentially send these short bursts of inconsequential information, which led to the name of Twitter. There's their logo history. It was called, I think that says Twitter, but Twitter, and then it went to Twitter, and it's been just the bird. A lot of people just call it the bird since 2012. As far as the users with the most subs, you've got Katy Perry at 109 million followers on Twitter. Justin Bieber, who's looking older now, finally. I'm glad that finally happened after 20 years, but 113 million. And then in number one is Barack Obama. This is like my favorite little jiffy of him, but 127 million subscribers. And so he stands with the most. But
wow.
So I got to ask you, I know you've got a Twitter account that you never respond to. No. I know you've got do you have you got an Instagram too, don't you?
I do. I'm not even sure how that was created. I don't know if maybe somebody created an account and hacked my account and then I just adopted it. So yeah.
So what else do you do? Do you do anything else? Do you do I'm gonna sound old here, but do you do that TikTok or do you do that Snapchat? No, I'm kidding. I'm not that old, but
it's funny that you mentioned that because I was going to bring it up too, is that, most of my social media is on Facebook. And I'm not huge on social media, right? I am a huge believer that social media has contributed to the detriment of our society and our ability to think critically and analytically about issues that come out. because you have this. It's created an environment, and I know I don't want to steal any thunder from you, but it's created this environment where you no longer have to have rational decision making about what your opinion is. It is easy for you to connect to like-minded individuals,
Exactly.
and to start creating your own vacuum where you have this echo chamber that supports whatever your perspective is, even when it's not rational. It's unhealthy. You would think that by connecting the world, you would make us more objective, and we've done quite the opposite there. We've polarized ourselves, and to some degree, all of these social media platforms are responsible. But once something becomes popular, like Facebook, just like MySpace before that, it eventually is going to die and be replaced by whatever's cool. Like, my kids do not get on Facebook because that's what you old boomers get on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, my niece, your daughter, oldest, she's on a couple of different platforms, and I get to see her post. She's very good about what she posts, so I'm very proud of her.
She's on all of it. Like,
I know she does.
My
all
kids
of it, all the time.
are on all of it. Like, I don't have time to do all of it because I'm working.
Well, and that's so. And I would say, like, I do a lot of like social media. Like, I do a lot of. I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm on Instagram all the time. And I'm on Facebook, but again, Facebook just drives me nuts with the privacy issues, and I can't, like, I really just want to throw that away and disconnect. But we've got the show, we've got Cantina Cast. I've got to have an account to do that, but it doesn't mean I have to have my personal account. That's a whole nother story. But I don't really appreciate some of the stuff. Like, it's just weird. Like, literally, one of my friends can send me a text message about something. I will launch Facebook, and then boom, I see the exact same thing I was just talking about in a text message as an advertisement in my feed, and it's not coincidental. There's been studies recently, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You probably know that about me, right?
Yeah.
I will say though that there's a lot of hard evidence out there where people have just literally, and a lot of this has changed, thankfully, in the last 2 years, where these microphones were turned on, and you would be talking to somebody, same situation. I'd hang up with someone, go into Facebook, and suddenly I have an advertisement for a topic or a subject that I was just having a phone conversation with. And Agreed. That's just way too coincidental, and it seems like it's a huge violation of my privacy. I know I'm sitting here complaining about it, and although I just said I'm on social media all the time, I do spend a lot of time on social media. It's hard for me to disconnect, but it's very liberating when I do too. When I go camping, it's off. Like, I may turn my camera on for my phone to take pictures, but I do not engage in social media unless it's absolutely necessary or something's going on. I'm completely unplugged because I just like that a lot more. And again, going back to the outdoor stuff.
Right. So I'm pretty selective about my social media management also, which is not like, I don't care how many followers or how many friends I have. None of that's important to me. Right. So I keep my circle relatively small. Right. Most of my information is public because who cares? I'm not doing anything top secret. But at the same time, I enjoy it for the exchange of information that we're not close to, like our sister, like we don't get to see her all the time because she's moved out of Texas, but we love her, and it makes me feel more connected to her and the kiddos because we get to follow them on social media. But even that, I've noticed that we've as a family, started gravitating toward group chats and more private conversations like that versus spilling out into the world.
Yep. We'll get into like some of the stuff that we've already hit on in terms of like, I don't want to say controversial, but some of the deeper topics here in just one second. But just quickly, in terms of total number of subscribers, you've got Facebook, and I know that text is really kind of hard to read, so I'll just let you know. So you got Facebook again sitting at about 2.8 billion subscribers. YouTube's right at 2 billion. WhatsApp is 2 billion. I've never understood that one.
Really?
It's huge. It's huge over in like Europe and India.
Huge everywhere. So I use WhatsApp more than I use anything. Right. WhatsApp is the reason why is because it's end-to-end encryption. They keep nothing on their servers. It is absolutely the most secure. I will tell you, I work with a number of, as you know, federal agencies on the security side, and virtually every one of those agencies swears by WhatsApp.
Nice.
So the beauty of it, the reason that you'll see that used in most countries outside of the United States is that WhatsApp doesn't require a subscription. It's web-based, which means as long as I have a secure internet connection, I can use WhatsApp as my messaging app. And frankly, there are countries that I go to where no one has a cell phone plan,
Right.
They're literally using everything on open free Wi-Fi.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
we've got the company I work with, we've got an India office, and they're all 100% on WhatsApp. And like you said, they don't even have plans. They just use
yep.
that. And I guess that's, if it's secure and you're afraid of, I guess maybe your government spying on you and all that, that probably would lend itself to more adoption.
On anyone, like if you're worried about your data ever existing, it doesn't even live on your phone. You can delete the app and it will wipe any existence of a message
Oh,
out.
wow.
WhatsApp is an incredibly secure app. Highly recommend.
Nice. Facebook Messenger, which that's probably just sheer brute force that people
Yeah.
I mean, they've done a great job of ensuring you cannot get around by it not having that.
They force you into that.
You've got WeChat at number 6. WeChat's 1.2 million or 1.2 billion, sorry. And that's like it's based out of China. There's a lot of controversy around how secure and what's being watched and logged there. You've got Instagram sitting at 1.1, and then you've got TikTok, QQ, which I have no idea what that is. Douyin, no idea what that is. Weibo, don't know what that is. Qzone,
Really?
nope, don't know.
Most of those are like a number of those are Chinese.
Yeah, that's
WeChat, for example, I really think WeChat has grown up because it's looked at to be an anti-establishment, anti-American corporate kind of approach to social media. I don't subscribe to that, but whatever.
Yeah. You've got Snapchat down there. I don't see TikTok. I skipped over them. 689 million subscribers. They've made a lot of movement here over the last couple of years. So we've talked about the addiction. There's certainly most recently very relevant was, Donald Trump and Donald Trump and a number of other people. And this is not a political statement. Twitter's been banning people forever for saying things that aren't true or actually, factually false or spewing hate messages. They don't police everybody, but if you're a sitting president or you're one of these very prominent figures and you're doing it, you've got a kind of a target on your back, unfortunately. So to say that he took the brunt of something that was unfair, he was singled out, that's actually not true. I know, especially in Star Wars. I hate to say this, not everything comes back to Star Wars, but in Star Wars land, Twitter is. It can be the best thing and it can be the worst thing when it comes to Star Wars. And there are a number of people that get banned all the time for saying really horrible things and, attacking celebrities or attacking other people because of, they're so vested in a certain character or whatever. So all of that's right. And I'm on the defensive. It's not, I have free speech. I can go out and say whatever I want. I just can't do it on that platform because I signed that stupid EULA. And if I want to use it, that's what I got to do. And if I don't like that, then I go jump on any one of those other apps that are right there.
Agreed.
And go do that.
I feel the same way. So, but I also think that it's not fair to sit there and say, hey, there's equity in the way that we're approaching this, because there's not.
Oh, right. No,
but my opinion is it is your right as the creator and the owner of this platform to do with whatever you want. So free speech doesn't guarantee equity of speech. It guarantees that you have the ability to say whatever you want. It doesn't guarantee that you have the medium to discuss it anywhere you want.
Exactly.
Right. So if people ask me, hey, do you think it's right that Donald Trump was banned from Twitter? My position's irrelevant. Does the company believe that they have the ability to do so? Then yes. Do I think it's difficult for them to maintain that? Yeah, because it's a slippery slope. But luckily, it's an ethical issue I don't have to deal with. It's something that company has to deal with. But it is ultimately their right to do so. So if a company, even a social media firm, were like to overtly say, hey, I want to present leftist ideals versus, far right conservative ideals, who cares? That's their choice to do so. Right. To me, I don't have a skin in the game. It's not like it's a federally provided service that taxpayers are paying for, and we have to guarantee equity in that sense.
Right.
Do I agree with them banning Donald Trump? No, any more than I don't agree with the whole, like, we should just ban everything to do with the Confederacy. Ultimately, and we've talked about this before, and we rarely talk about politics, is look, if that's someone's position, at least you know where they stand, right? Like it's better to me to have somebody just openly just wear the stars and bars and, for whatever reason they're doing it, and make you self-aware of hey, that's where that guy stands in the world,
Yep.
versus creating a world where we whitewash it to the point where you can't distinguish the friends from foes. Right.
Yep.
So
there's the misinformation as well. This was a one that Facebook was running sometime last year about help friends and family avoid false information about COVID-19. And when COVID-19 came out, much like we talked about with AIDS, right? There was a lot of misinformation about it. And if you think about the time, we were talking about Mr. Belvedere, and excuse me for bringing up Mr. Belvedere, but there was
do
a lot
not apologize for that, sir.
but there was, when the AIDS epidemic started, there was a lot of misinformation. And where would we go? I mean, we would go to the news, but there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, there were not a lot of conversations there. We didn't have social media. So that's where we went. And we talked about this, like I said, in the last episode. You had people watching this unaware, ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, just they were not aware of what AIDS was and what possibly could happen. And their news source, if you will, was coming from Mr. Belvedere, right? And they were trying to make that a very poignant episode and kind of spew what they knew at the time. But it's nothing. There's no difference other than now it's probably even worse, right? Because there, like you said earlier, it does not take very much effort to spin up a narrative that is either false, misleading, promotes some ideal in some way. And then you add on the level of social media sensationalism that happens with it, right? And people wanting to belong to a part of a group or feeling obligated to be a part of a group, that then changes their perspective, their opinions. And so you have that herd mentality where everybody's suddenly doing the same thing and wanting the same thing. And that is one of the problems that I have with social media. It's no longer, it's hard to find the facts. And I'm not excusing anybody of it, right? I'm not absolving anyone of it. But when there's so many of these things out there, and you've got misleading stories left and right, and you've got people complaining about the news medias. And I'll say this, most of the news medias are biased one way or the other. Where do you go to get your information? Right. Most
and
people are going to pick Facebook.
And you know what, the tragedy to me is that for as much as they're trying, and with good intent, right? Facebook is trying with good intent to execute this. They are not qualified to do so. Right. The idea that you are going to allow a social media platform to be the filter as to what is false and what is true is ridiculous in a pandemic where, at least early in the inception of the virus, nobody knew. You could literally, and you know me, I did as part of my job and just as a proper nerd, I've done an incredible amount of academic research on this, on the medical papers. Like, I don't read the newspaper article in USA Today.
Right.
I'm reading the medical journal article
the science
about what it's saying about the efficacy of this and how they're testing it. And the reality is there was so much testing and so many papers being written. And some of those papers, and I think what the average American misses is that, oh, well, I read this and this was in the Harvard Law Review, or this was done by MIT, or this. And in some cases, that's not enough weight. You have to look at the totality of the study, how they looked at the groups, who funded it, right? So when you start finding out that companies like Pfizer or these pharma companies are telling you what the problem is, that's not an unbiased source. Everybody beyond the media, it's almost like it's percolated from this, or, it's dripping from the regular mainstream media. And then it would, social media, and then even academia is victimized by it, where you could get UC Berkeley and MIT to be giving absolutely conflicting, what would otherwise be considered absolute objective research on a given topic with two different conclusions.
Yes.
So it's led us to the position where both sides can now point to an academic journal article and say, this is what scientists say.
Right.
And the other side is false. And in some cases, that was it. I remember early on in the COVID-19 pandemic, there was quite a bit of discussion, including from Dr. Fauci and some of the experts, where they were talking about, we can expect here in the United States for there to be as many as, 30 million dead. And it was worst case scenario. And they were citing a paper. And so I went out and read the paper, and the paper basically said, if COVID-19 were to exist unchecked, right? Like it was just to be passed and nobody was to do anything, this is what your fatality figures could potentially be.
Right. It was a
If you didn't
doomsday
do
scenario.
anything. Yeah. It's that literally people are dying around you and you continue not to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the number will be. And
Yeah.
they're like, look at all these people that are going to die. And, I think there was moderate research in there that was ignored where people were happy taking I don't need to wear masks
Mhm.
versus the people that we're all going to die.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, if you were looking at the bell curve of viral infection, even from the early papers, you could project what was going to happen here and the rest of the world. And frankly, because of the way that viruses work, nothing's changing that. You might change the timing, but ultimately, this is what's going to occur.
Yeah.
And the idea that Facebook would like, oh, I'll police that. Dude, get out of here, bro.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to me, it's laughable.
And a lot of it was, a lot of it was they were pressured too. They've pressured by their own customers, external sources. Same thing with the speech and what was going on with Twitter. And I don't have a good answer. I'm not here to preach anything or suggest anything, or I don't have a fix for all of this. Like you said, it's up to them to figure this out. And I have, God be with them. It becomes a problem more and more each day, right? It compounds with everything else that's going on. All the way to the last piece here, which is just around privacy. And I've kind of harped on this about enough. I put rest in peace Google Plus because that's the most recent little picture I could find. But you're giving up a sense of your life. And I know you said, and for, like me and you, like you, I don't do anything that's secretive. Most of what I do on social media is an open book. I post a lot of things. I have, because I do these 2 shows, I'm out there and people can see who I am and see what I do and see the things I like. And that doesn't really bother me. But at the same time, there's something about me feeling in control of that, right? I'd like to feel in control of what I'm putting out there and what people can see and what people know about me. And I know that's not the case.
Yeah, it's a myth. Privacy is a myth online.
Exactly.
And we both know that. And so does anyone who operates in this space. There is the idea of privacy. And so it's oxymoronical to talk about social media and privacy together. It doesn't exist. At the point that you disclose data to a server that you don't control for network standards that you don't establish, you are in an indefensible position. Your information, you should work off an assumption that anything you post is going to be published or accessible to anyone, whether it's marketing groups, whether it's government, whether it's the company you work for. You should just operate from that position. And if you operate from anything else under this false sense of security of privacy, you're wrong. You're just being naive. And that, both of us are objective guys. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That's a math problem.
Yeah. No, it is. You have privacy to a certain extent. Like it has its limits. Like you said, the minute it leaves your network, you don't have any control over that stuff. I get it.
There's a difference between an expectation of privacy and the guarantee of privacy.
Yeah.
And then even companies working in the best interests of protecting privacy. And honestly, we both know social media platforms aren't operating from that perspective.
No.
Because there's money to be made on the back end.
All about money. Yep.
And at the point that these companies become publicly traded, the interest of protection of your privacy is working against the net revenue of those firms. You have no chance.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't. But even if you thought you had this expectation of privacy, you're not going to get it. Not guaranteed. Agreed. Oh, what is going on here? Speaking of transition,
we're going to transition to our next topic, which is the finger of death, and that's not really what it is. So the finger of death is a spell from Dungeons and Dragons, and where is the quote on? You know why I don't have this? I don't have the right page up. Hold on. I apologize. Maybe I'll edit this out. Maybe I won't. I had all these quotes in here, and I'm looking at the wrong sheet. That's why I didn't have the one for Goodwill Hunting. So now I can't pull up anything. Stay with us, folks. This is a professional podcast. Well, can you look that up? I don't have it in front of me again. All right. So Finger of Death is a spell that came out in the 2nd edition of the player's handbook, which you see there on the left-hand side. It is has a range of 60 yards. It's got visual and semantic components. If you guys don't know what that means, I'll explain here in just one second. It is a permanent spell once cast. It's got a casting time of 5, which is relatively quick. It can impact one creature, and a saving throw will negate it or has an ability to impact it. So what it does is the Finger of Death spell snuffs out the victim's life force. Is successful, the victim can be neither raised nor resurrected. In addition, any human subjects the spells initiates changes to the body such that after 3 days, the caster can, by means of a special ceremony costing no less than 1,000 gold pieces plus 500 gold pieces per body, animate the corpse of a juju zombie under the control of the caster.
What kind of zombie?
Juju zombie.
What does that even mean, bro?
It's like a lesser, like a lackey zombie kind of thing. They follow you around and they're in your kind of control. They're not independent zombies, if you will, right? Okay, so this spell was created. Do I have anything on here? Yeah, it was created by a necromancer by the name of Deathid, and he was obsessed with all kinds of necromantic, like death spells and things, right? He did clone, which will allow him to clone his body and do have another body in case this one ever died. He had the trap the soul spell, which allows you to literally take somebody's soul and trap it within a gem and hold it hostage. And the only way to free that soul was to smash the gem. There was Circle of Death, which was way more powerful than this spell. It literally was a circle of death. It would kill anything in a certain radius. And then this one, was, of course, is Finger of Death. This was a 7th level spell, both in the 2nd edition manual, as well as the most recent, which is, I think, 5th edition here. And I'm not going to go through the differences. It has been toned down just a little bit, just because this was a super powerful spell when it was out. Did you find the quote there on that one?
Oh, I failed you for the last time.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Okay, well, let me see. I've got the quotes for the rest of them. That's all I really have on Finger of Death. I don't spend a lot of time on the D&D stuff. It's like, okay, what are we going to talk about? I can tell you about adventures that I went on where I got to use this, but that's not really that exciting. I did find this. This is from one of the comic books. I think it was DC did a line of Dungeons and Dragons comics during the 80s, I want to say. In this particular, I'm assuming she's a mage or wizard, I would say, is using the Finger of Death spell.
I've got you now.
You got me?
Ready?
Yeah.
I made my avatar invisible, teleported in, and zeroed his ass out with a 99th level Finger of Death spell.
Yeah. And that would do it. I mean, if you were 99th level, the chances of you being able to make a saving throw were pretty slim to none at that point. So, cool spell.
Little prick reference for him.
Okay, I'll give you the next reference because it's actually for the next 2 topics. It says the elevator has been designed so that if you look straight up during its descent, it perfectly recreated the look of the top secret Pepsi elevator guarded by B.B. King in Spies Like Us. And we'll get to, I've got a visual of what this elevator looks like a little bit later, but Will's going to talk to us about this fine young gentleman here named Mr. B.B. King.
So B.B. King, I'll tell you, I've been blessed. I traveled to Memphis quite a bit for business. And Memphis is much like New Orleans, except without the smell of urine on bourbon, right? So being on Beale Street, I will tell you, is fantastic. I don't know that there is 2 cities between New Orleans and Memphis that I've ever been to that have a better feel for live music, up and coming music, experimental music. I love maybe Austin, right? So Austin, yeah. I would add to that mix. They have an incredible music scene. But any night of the week, you can go out and find fantastic artists. So B.B. King comes in the vein of great jazz and blues musicians like Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Buddy Guy, Robert Johnson, Stevie Ray, Eric Clapton, John Mayall. And you just go on, right? It doesn't matter. What I love about the blues is timeless, right? It doesn't matter what we're talking about, what era of blues we're talking about. It can exist anywhere in time. B.B. King, of course, one of the legends of the blues, born September 16th, 1925, on a plantation in Itta-Bena, Mississippi. It was actually named Riley B. King, started recording in the 1940s as a teenager before moving to Memphis in 1947. So he passed away, sadly, in 2015, as most people know, at age 89. He's inspired a generation of musicians, everyone from Eric Clapton, George Harrison, Jeff Beck, John Lennon, who once famously said, "I want nothing more in my life than to be able to play like B.B. King."
Wow.
Modern artists like Chris Stapleton, Keith Urban. There are so many artists that lend themselves to B.B. King, his string pulls.
John Mayer.
Exactly. John Mayer, who I think is an amazing guitarist. It's not traditional blues isolated. It's blues, jazz, swing, pop, rock. It's all of those blended to create this unique style that is so much BB King. I was fortunate enough to go and see BB King perform in Memphis. He often performed at BB King's in Memphis. He has a
Is it
house
like a
band.
restaurant or a
It's a restaurant,
venue?
but they have a huge. It feels like a music venue. It just happens to serve food,
Nice.
right? And they have countless performers go there just to share the stage that he was on with his house band. Justin Timberlake's been there. I can't even name all the
Wow.
performers that have sung while they were there. So originally he learned to play guitar from Buka White, which was BB King's mother's cousin. Now, BB King's mother hated him playing jazz. She referred to the blues as the devil's music, right? And never supported that. But in his career, I mean, he made over 50 albums. He has the most blues Grammys of any performer in history with 15. And his favorite singer, I found this interesting, is Frank Sinatra. If you go to the next slide, this is something interesting. A lot of people say, well, I'm not a big fan of BB King. I'm not familiar with his music. Back one.
Sorry.
But BB King's music has been featured in over 100 movies and television shows. There's virtually no human on earth that has watched a TV show or movies that existed who hasn't heard his music in something. It doesn't matter if it's something as on the nose as the Blues Brothers 2000, or Fresh Prince, which are all pretty on the nose, but everything from WKRP to Chicago Hope, Wonder Years, Sesame Street, of course, the new Hawaii Five-0, RoboCop, you name it.
Wow.
And Spies Like Us.
Yes.
Okay. So all of those it's interesting, between 1951 and 1985, which don't represent his entire recording career, he's had 74 different songs charted on the Billboard R&B charts. 2 of those went to number 1. He's famously known for his guitar Lucille. Everybody's heard that's a Gibson ES 355, or at least that's what he was toward the end of his life, right? There have been over 40 Lucilles. He's always referred to them that way. Yeah. So he's performing at. Are you familiar with the backstory of who Lucille is and why he named his guitar Lucille?
He's got songs where he mentioned mentions the name.
Yeah, there's a song literally called Lucille.
Yeah.
So he was performing at a club one night, and 2 guys got into a fight. They knocked over some fuel, set fire to the club. Everyone was evacuated. He ran back in to save his guitar. That part of the story actually deviates between who's telling it. And he later found out that the 2 guys were fighting over a woman named Lucille. So that's why he always referred to his guitar that way. Oh. So his guitar, one of his most famous guitars, which was a prototype from the 1980s, again gifted to him for his 80th birthday by Gibson. One of those Lucille's recently sold at auction for $280,000. He's actually got a pretty interesting fan base too. One of his Lucille's was stolen in 2005, and so one of his huge fans, who was a collector of his guitars, found it at a pawn shop where apparently the thieves had pawned it. Went back and researched where the guitar came from and actually returned it to BB King with no expectation of anything.
Wow.
Just bananas. BB obviously isn't his name, even though like we talked about, his name was Riley B. But BB actually stood for Beale Street Blues Boy. So it was like 4 B's at one point. He narrowed it down to 2 B's. Did it EBDBs?
EBDB?
I don't know if you know what that is.
But no, I don't.
Eskimo Brother Database. EBDBs.
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. I don't. Is this like child friendly, kid friendly, family friendly? No. Okay. Okay, we'll move on.
It's interesting. Like go to the next slide.
All right.
So here's some photos of him and some of the performers that he inspired. I do have a really close, a really short game for you.
Oh boy. So
BB King was in the military. He was in the military for a very short period of time. He was drafted in World War II. he was actually removed from service because his ability to drive tractors was considered essential to the war effort at home. So he was removed from the military, and that's the tractor he drove. At one point, he was driving that tractor, destroyed the smokestack on it. He thought he would get in trouble, so he took off to Memphis to hang out with his cousin, and the rest is history.
Oh, interesting.
So what I have here for you is I've got 12 photos of musical performers. 11 of these performers are veterans of the United States military. One is not.
One is
let's
not?
Go through them.
Okay.
I'm going to name them for you.
Let me try to name them first.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
You tell me if I'm wrong.
All right.
So you're asking me if all of these guys are okay? No, I got the question. All right. So
all of them are veterans, but one.
Okay, so you've got Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, John Fogerty,
exactly.
Ice-T.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna guess that's Shaggy.
Yeah, he's wearing a shirt that says it.
Okay. James Blunt.
Yes. Wow.
MC Hammer.
Yes. Oh, you skipped it. I was like, that's Elvis. Like you were going left to right.
Okay, Elvis. I can't really. Is that the what's his name from Limp Bizkit?
Yeah, Fred Durst.
Fred Durst. Okay. I don't know who that is in the bottom left.
Bottom left.
It's not Snoop Dogg.
That's DMX.
That's DMX?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen him. Jimi Hendrix and
George
Strait, which I should know because of San Antonio.
Yeah.
Okay. So there I've done my math. All right. So let me eliminate the people that I know were in the military. And I'll start with the easy one. So Preston was in the military. James Blunt was in the military.
Yep.
I'm going to guess DMX was in the military.
He was not.
He was the one? Was that trick? Because you got him in camo.
Yeah, I do that trick because that's all he wears is camo.
Oh, does he?
Right. And so every time that I'm at like a Walmart and there's some like thug wearing camo, I walk by and go, "Thank you for your service," knowing that person didn't serve in the military. But no, every one of the other artists.
Are you kidding me? So I would have not guessed that Willie Nelson nor Hendrix, given what they were doing, where they were at the time, that they would have served in the military. Maybe Nelson because he's a little bit older, but Hendrix, that's surprising.
All of that. So those ones are actually easier reads for me because you're talking about a period in time where the draft was
happening, in
effect, and they all had to. So this is going to be shocking to you, but Jimi Hendrix was not successful in the military. His leadership couldn't wait to get him out of service because he just didn't fit into the military lifestyle.
Same thing with Nelson. He was constantly high. They were like, "Okay, you got to go, dude."
Yeah, well, I don't think they had drug testing back then.
No, probably not.
And frankly, if you were serving in some of these wars, as for someone, I think you and I have talked about this before. I didn't smoke or drink before I went to what I would consider a hot combat zone. And I think at that point, you like will leave that environment going. You'll be far less judgmental of people in Vietnam who were doing drugs. You're like, I get it.
Yeah.
You can't cope with this. This is unheard of.
Okay. Sorry, we're gonna move on to Spies Like Us.
Yeah.
Which was almost going to be the anchor, but I really wanted to do Thunderdome as the anchor. So it could have gone three ways here between this, Good Will Hunting, and Thunderdome. But Spies Like Us is a movie that came out in 1985. Let me give you the quick synopsis. This is yet another timeless tale of fear and loathing the mighty USSR, only this time it stars Dr. Raymond Stantz and Fletch, who are caught cheating on their foreign service exams and then recruited as U.S. spies, but not the actual spies, but rather meat shields for the real actual spies. They are then sent to the ninja training / U.S. Armed Forces training camp under the instruction of UN Jefferson, former head of Lambda fraternity.
UN Jefferson.
And then dispatched to sunny Pakistan, where their mission is to die as decoys or seek out a Russian mobile warhead, arm it, launch it, and then engage in copious adult bedroom behavior with women well beyond their league in the 42 minutes that remain before the end of the world and the start of World War III. That's kind of what happens. Spoiler alert, they both live. This movie was directed by John Landis. It stars Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, which we can see right in the top left. Oh, well, no, they're right here on this main page. Interesting enough, So there's a couple little things that happened here. So originally, this movie was supposed to be Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, and he obviously passed. And so they ended up going after Chevy Chase, who you see there in the bottom right hand corner. The script was written by Aykroyd. If you've ever watched this movie or seen it, or seen any of his movies like this or Ghostbuster, you can tell Dr. Detroit. He's got just a style of his writing, a style of scripting and dialogue, and the use of acronyms is something that's just totally Dan Aykroyd. And there's no shortage of acronyms in this movie at all. It was also what's that?
Acronyms.
Acronyms, I like that. It was also co-wrote with Dave Thomas, who you see on the right-hand side. And I threw this in there. I want you to guess which one is the real Dave Thomas that wrote the script, the one on the left or the one on the right?
I'm assuming the guy from SCTV, you hoser.
Yeah. Hey, you only knew that because you read the show notes.
No, I didn't know, man. I've watched that movie, man. That's a great movie.
So like, yeah, that is Dave Thomas. But every time I think Dave Thomas, he's not the first Dave Thomas that comes to mind. It's always the Wendy's guy.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was that guy's name.
Dave Thomas?
No, the other, like, I know
the
Dave
SCTV
Thomas.
guy.
Yeah, I didn't. What, I can't even.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows Rick Moranis, and I think people tend to forget Dave Thomas. In the bottom left-hand corner, that's Donna Dixon, who plays Karen Boyer. She's ends up being Dan Aykroyd's wife, and they are to this day still married. They've got a number of kids. They would go on to star in a couple of other movies after this as well. I think she was in Dr. Detroit, and I think that's when they finally got married. But this is where they met. They met in this. And what's funny is she ends up hooking up with Chevy Chase's character, which, I wonder what that was like. But yeah, it was originally supposed to be, Belushi and Aykroyd were really, really good friends and very, very close. And so this was something they were brewing, thinking about doing back as early as 1981. They were in talks about doing a spy movie. And then with the tragic death of Belushi, the reins were handed over to Chevy Chase, who's now just absolutely insufferable by all accounts. There are a lot of great lines and scenes in this movie. I would say that typically, or I would say it's not like one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite comedies. It did really well at the box office. The budget was $22 million, and I'll tell you where all that money went to a little bit later. It ended up making $77 million, so it was a huge success at the box office. But the critics really thrashed this movie, and again, it's not a really well done movie by any means, but it does have a lot of funny moments. It's a lot of like individual skits and comedic bits that they put together and kind of weave together to make this kind of a story.
Not always successfully. So that's my criticism of this film. This film is funny, but it does feel like in SCTV, more even so than SNL, it feels like a bunch of sketch comedy bits that were cobbled together to make this Frankenstein movie that sometimes works. Like the overarching arc to me is terrible, but there are memorable scenes in this film.
Oh yeah,
because some of the skits just land perfectly.
Yeah, the whole, Chevy Chase's physical comedy throughout all this is like some of his best stuff. You can see a little bit up there in the top left-hand corner when he's cheating on the exam. That's the ninja scene, which is just, it's so far out there. Like you wonder, like, what in the world, like, how did this even make it into the script? But, they're attacked by these faux ninjas, and then suddenly, what's his name comes in and saves them. They've got like, a little, like this here, like, yeah, it's a dick fur. And then the other one says, what's a dick fur? And he says, to pee with. So, I mean, it's like, and it's just randomly in there. This joke's in there, which is a funny joke, but it's like, it's so, I would even say it's out of character for these guys. I don't know why they would do this in this moment, especially in this moment when they feel surrounded and threatened. It just, I don't see, it's out of place. There's no shortage of gratuitous women in here as well. As you can see there were 3 very lovely women that were in this film. The bottom left-hand corner, you can see the doctor scene. That is something, I worked at a place about almost 20 years ago now. And that's all we did as we were walking through the hallways, all the IT department. Everybody would see each other and we'd go, doctor, 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 the entire time. And it was just a running a gag, this is where this stemmed from here is Spies Like Us. And then in reference to the elevator scene, that's it in the bottom right-hand corner. So that's them holding the Pepsi. They go into that elevator and it just drops them down. I couldn't find a good visual GIF of what it looked like because there's a shot where they actually show above them and you can see them kind of descending down and falling. That's more or less what was coming from the Ready Player 2 novel is how I imagine. But that probably gives you enough context right there. So he was kind of going down that shaft there. There's another bit here that happens when they get recruited. They get bumped up to GLG 20. Is that even a thing? GLG 20, is that made up?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what that is. But they got bumped up to that level, and they got a pay grade. So they ended up going to this training camp, and they had to basically pass, was it 2, 4, 6 tests, right? They went through. And again, this is where it feels very like, it's very like sketch comedy kind of thing. So there's the obstacle course. It's like a real obstacle course where they're blowing things up around them, and it's live ammunition. There's the one there in the middle and the top where they have to jump into the bog and they get shot at. Then there's the water test where they've got I've got it written down here, what he called all of these things. But they basically had to survive like the water and see how well they float, which this was a big scene. Like if you look at the trailers for this movie, this scene was in there. The one where they're in the G-force chamber or the G-force ride or whatever that is. That was another one that was in there.
Right. Those aren't rides.
They're rides.
Hey, so real talk. If you ever meet a security guy and you want to find out whether or not, like a proper security guy in the real world, you want to find out if they have a sense of humor. Look at their resumes, because occasionally people's LinkedIn profiles within our industry will have like GLG 20 as like they'll have like a day within their job history
that they worked at,
that they were a GLG 20, which is not real.
Not a real thing. Yeah, they've got there's a scene in there where they're getting hit with the flamethrowers, and then probably my favorite one is when they test the crash test, and they just set them over the top, and that little plane just crashes there like that. So again, good little comedy bits throughout. Interesting. Also, there are a lot of directors, and this is probably indicative of a lot of movies that came out in the 80s. People went on to go become writers and directors and producers. So it's not uncommon, but this one just had a number of them that just stood out for me in this movie, playing lesser characters. In fact, some of these guys don't even speak. You've got Terry Gilliam in here. He ended up doing a couple movies with some of the actors, but he's got a very small cameo. You've got Sam Raimi in one of his earliest things he's ever done, in the top right there. You've got Martin Brest, who's done Beverly Hills Cop, Son of a Woman, Meet Joe Black, the critically acclaimed Jiggy or whatever with Ben Affleck, and no, I'm kidding. That movie tanked. You've got Joel Coen, so one of the Coen brothers down there. We all know him from Fargo, Big Lebowski, Brother Where Art Thou, True Grit, and then Frank Oz, who's the test proctor when he's taking the test itself. So of course we know him from Muppets and Dark Crystal and all that as well. But yeah, all these guys were in there. Same thing with Joel Coen. He's got a small role. He says like one or two lines. But yeah, if you blink, you miss these guys. But they're in there. Here's B.B. King in his role. He's been in a lot of movies.
Yeah, over 50.
Yeah, I was surprised to see how many. I've never gone, like, he's so like unassuming and just, he doesn't stand out really. He looks like an average kind of person. But
in almost every film, his character is B.B. King. Like
listed as B.B. King.
Never has like a alias that he's playing by.
Right. He's just B.B. King.
Yeah.
This is the Lancaster Drive-In, top right-hand corner. This was an actual movie or drive-in that was used to film this. I think it's still around. There's a website that's got it all documented. You can go take pictures and take your pictures standing next to some of these famous scenes. Most of this is where the budget was spent. There's moments where they've got this like these elaborate cannons in the bottom right-hand corner that pop up out of the theater when it's getting transformed into this Star Wars project. And not to get into the premise of the movie, but a part of it is they're trying to shoot down. The idea was they're going to launch this missile and then blow it up from outer space and detonate it above, so it harmlessly would blow up. That doesn't happen, and Dan Aykroyd and those guys have to go in and kind of help do things to save everybody. But you can see the special effects there weren't very special. It was literally just drawn. And it was like so like over the top. It had to like bounce off a couple of things. They never explained it all, but whatever. It's movie magic. There's a Star Wars connection. So Christopher Malcolm, who plays Rogue 2 in Empire Strikes Back, is in this for he's got one line. He yells it. He is the, what do they call those guys? The jump mans or the jump coordinators?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're jumping out of plane, the guy that yells, go, 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 that guy. Yeah, that's him.
Red light, green light. Okay. Yeah, that guy.
That guy. Right. kind of a stereotype, but yeah, he is in that. So it's kind of cool to see a familiar face. And I won't spend too much time here, but this is the Ace Tomato Company is the false company in here that the CIA works under. They work under the guise of this Ace Tomato Company, and it plays a bigger role in the movie, and you kind of see this logo everywhere. There's actually some reality that's based in this. And the way the story goes is there was actually a company called the United Fruit Company, and that's the logo in the top right-hand corner. That was they owned about 42% of all the Guatemalan land back in as early as like in the 40s and in the 50s. All right, so that's a substantial amount of land that they owned. They would use this land to grow bananas primarily, other fruits, coffee, and they were known for really exploiting the workers of Guatemala. And it was a U.S.-based company, right? And what happened was there was a revolution that started in Guatemala in 1944. And because of the revolution, these guys started to lose a ton of money. It was a war-torn land. People were revolting. They were quitting. They were deciding not to, they didn't want to work in the conditions that the United Fruit Company was providing for them or didn't provide for them, if you will. And so these guys got really upset. And so they went out and actually contacted the U.S. government. So they reached out to Harry Truman and said, hey, we need this revolution needs to end. We got to get this guy out of power because we're not making any money. I know this sounds really shady, but this is all well documented. And so in 1952, Operation PB Fortune started, and it overturned the then ruler of Guatemala. There was a successor that went in place, and that spawned Operation PB Success, which ended in 1954, and successfully overthrew that guy that you see down here where it says military coup. They got him out of power. And because of that, the Banana Fruit Company was allowed to, make the money that they were making. And there's a lot of shady stuff that happened here. But the point of the story was that the Ace Tomato Company, Dan Aykroyd is huge into conspiracy theories. He's huge into history, CIA stuff. This is all stuff that he just follows outside of his normal everyday, day-to-day activities and, profession. And he was trying to base this loosely on this United Fruit Company, I should say. United Fruit Company is what he was trying to base the Ace Tomato Company on. To make matters worse, and this is the last thing I'll talk about, there's a gentleman by the name of John Foster Dulles, who's in the bottom left-hand corner here. He was the United States Secretary of State at the time. And right next to him is his brother, who is Alan Dulles. And he was the first director of the CIA. They were both on the payroll for United Fruit Company for 38 years. And then there was also a gentleman by the name of Ed Whitman, who was married to Ann Whitman, who was Dwight Eisenhower's personal secretary. So there were a lot of ties back to this United Fruit Company and the CIA being connected and meddling in foreign affairs for probably personal reasons, probably for financial reasons. I didn't really get into a lot of the history because it's like, okay, it's horrible and it happened. Chiquita Banana now owns the United Fruit Company. They were involved in a number of other scandals. They've paid money out to victims, and they've been paid off. I mean, they've paid off the Colombian governments and the Guatemalan governments. And I mean, it was like I was going down this rabbit hole of all of these horrible things that these fruit companies have done over the years that I was just absolutely floored and surprised that it happened. Were you aware of any of this stuff? Like, it doesn't come up in any of our history lessons or books.
No, I mean, but I'm also one who's not surprised by that. Because I'm a conspiracy theorist, because this isn't really conspiracy theory to me. It is
factual at this point.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that is that we lose context of just how. I mean, you're talking about a period that was like reaching the height of McCarthyism, the Red Scare, the post-World War II environment. Like, you got to put all that in context. Were we doing shady things in many ways, or on many fronts, the perception of what was the protection of democracy versus communism? It was, to many people, a binary decision between the choice between good and evil. And there was recognition that in order for us to compete with it, there had to be these black ops done. There had to be these types of activities by the CIA that were seemingly unattractive.
Yeah.
But morally.
I get it.
I don't agree with it. Like you, I get it. I don't agree with it. But I understand. We live in a different world. We have the luxury of looking back and being judges.
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say that we're probably doing shady stuff right now.
Of course we are.
We'll know in like 40 years
Of course we are.
20 years.
Right. Yeah. And I don't, I think the difference is I don't judge our government for it. I recognize it. There are two schools of thought along a spectrum with two poles. One is that the government has a responsibility completely transparent with their constituency about the activities they take. That's one side. The other side is there are activities that the government have to take that are unpleasant, that are not for the consumption of everybody in the society. And I see both perspectives and I land somewhere in the middle. I'm not, I don't begrudge our government for the actions they have to take in order to protect the democracy and to give us the freedom to have the opinions we do.
They're okay. I don't disagree. I don't want to get too deep in here. There's there is a music video, believe it or not, called "Spies Like Us," and they got Paul McCartney to do this. There's a music video that goes with this as well, and that's kind of him there. That's obviously Paul McCartney in the bottom right. That's also him with the fake mustache and the eyebrows. Chevy Chase is in the video. Dan Aykroyd's in the video, as you would expect. And the song goes, "Spies Like Us, dun, 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 Spies Like Us." I don't know if you remember this thing.
I do.
It's a catchy tune. Like I don't really have a problem with it. It's all McCarthy, but I actually liked it. I wouldn't go. I'm not out there listening to it. I'm not jamming to it. That's not. I just think it's a good song. But it did get me down another rabbit hole here around Chevy Chase, because like I didn't realize he was in this video, and I started thinking, well, I know he was in other music videos. Do you know how many music videos Chevy Chase has been in?
4.
That is right, 4. Here are the 4. Can you name the 4?
2 by Paul Simon. One is You Can Call Me Al, Spies Like Us, and I don't know.
Oh yeah. So you got in the top left, and that's them doing like the MC Hammer dance. Like I had no idea this video is out there. It's absolutely horrible and shameful. But all 3 of them do it. So that one, and it's got Steve Martin as well, as you can see there. So it's got Steve Martin, Paul Simon, and Chevy Chase. That was the 1990 single "Proof," which is actually a pretty good song. Video is really corny. That is You Can Call Me Al, or You Call Me Al, whatever.
Yeah.
1986. And the bottom left, that's him in Spies Like Us. And then the one in the bottom right that most people forget he was in was Ghostbusters. And because he's at the very, very end, like the Ghostbusters music video has all these famous celebrities saying, Ghostbusters the entire time. And they keep cutting in and out. When the music finally fades out and the song's over, the very last thing you see, well, there's one thing you see after that, but the very last person you see in the video is Chevy Chase smoking a cigarette. He tries to like bring it into his mouth, and he fakes it. He burnt his mouth, and he kind of spits it up, and it's all for about 1 second that he's in it. So yeah, 4 music videos. Who would have known that Chevy Chase would be in there?
Wow.
All right, that's all I got. Okay, we're going to spend the next hour talking about the Batcave. You've got so many freaking notes on the Batcave. No, I wouldn't say notes, but you got a lot of pictures, so take it away.
I'm going to simplify this for everybody.
All right, let me give you the quote here. I secretly loved coming down here 3 kilometers beneath the earth in this armored concrete bunker. I felt like it was in my own private Batcave, although it was obvious to me now that Bruce Wayne never would have been able to construct his crime-fighting crib all by himself in total secrecy with no one to help him lay the plumbing or pour the concrete, but his geriatric butler, no way.
Oh, contraire, mon frere. You're wrong here, because Batman certainly could have built the Batcave. It just depends on which Batcave you're talking about. Because what I've learned, once again, I've been impressed with the comic book folks who are out there. There are so many iterations of this. Earth 1, Earth 2, New Earth, Batman Beyond, Flashpoint, Justice League. There's 1,000 Batcaves. All of them have unique Batcaves. Some of them share the same elements, and some of them have different backstories. It's crazy.
Yep.
So here's the traditional look at the Batcave. If you're looking at the comic book series, they're made of the same 4 elements as you go through it. He's going to have his computer. He's going to have his garage.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have his laboratory. And initially, this obviously wasn't the case, but it took on some prominence as it moved forward. And that's the trophy room, which is funny because in the comic books, the trophy room just keeps getting bigger. There are like over 1,000 objects within his trophy room, which, isn't that a bit? It's a bit much, Bruce.
It's a bit excessive, right?
Yeah, it's a bit much for you to have this.
What's he going to do with all his money, though, right? I mean, I think
all the people that you have. And first of all, that's way too deep, right? That's not how deep the Batcave is. By all accounts, the Batcave is like 90 feet deep to the first level, and then goes to 274 feet deep and exists 13 kilometers away from Gotham City,
Wow.
depending on the comic books that you're reading. But that's the general consensus. This is what it looks like. Go on, Albert. Let's talk about the history of the Batcave.
Go on, Albert.
Come on, Albert. So the Batcave, interestingly enough, didn't originate in the comic books series itself, but the 1943 serials that were released. So I highly encourage this, Albert. I went on a YouTube spiral about a week ago, and I watched all of these Batman serials that are out there. They're all on YouTube, sequential. The quality is fantastic for 1943, and it's exactly what you would expect of a serial. It's really corny. The fight scenes are terrible. Many of the episodes are beyond borderline racists.
So you're saying these fight scenes were very reminiscent of the West Side Story fight scene that you and I did in high school?
We were
racist.
They were far better
cheesy.
than they were. Yeah, there was some racism involved. But dude, I'm telling you, there's like one of the episodes is called Batman versus the Chinamen or something crazy. It's bananas. So at the time that this came out, there was a Batman comic book, the Batman dailies, and the Batman show. And all of this is obviously pre-World War II, at least from the U.S. perspective. So the guy who was writing the dailies was on the set, the episode, and I believe it was episode 2 called the Bat's Cave. And at that point, the Bat Cave was pretty basic. In fact, it was terrible. It was just a cave with a desk and then a Batman logo behind him. That was the extent of what was in the Bat's Cave. So the guy who wrote the dailies for the comic strip that appeared in the newspaper said, let me do a little bit with this. Let me go pull up a Popular Mechanics. Let me see what this would look like. So he did a bunch of research on what underground hangars look like at the time in preparation for World War II. And he built the Batcave cross section based on that only 2 months after the Batman serial aired in 43. So in October, within 4 months of that, the Batcave made its first appearance in comic strips or the actual comic book. And at that point, they built a cross section that looked very similar to it. Before that, there was no Batcave for Batman. So Batman's...
He's just hanging out in the mansion?
No, they just kept it. He kept that crap in the barn. Like all of his Batmobile and stuff was just in the barn. The barn that is even to this day supposed to be a front for the underground tunnel leading to the Batcave. But originally, that's where he kept everything. The Bat suits were just kept in a wooden box. And frankly, if you've seen any of the serials from the 40s, that's where you keep that crappy ass uniform. It's not worth being in anything but a wooden box somewhere in Wayne Manor. And the laboratory was set in the background somewhere. So that is where it appeared in the comic books. But I think there's a bigger question of where did the Batcave originally, come from in terms of the comic book. And again, we get 4 primary stories here. One, these are
what in the world? There's like Davy Crockett in here.
You're gonna have to
prehistoric man. What is
you're
the Underground Railroad?
One that you see on your left there is Batman 205. So Batman builds a time machine, goes back
to the
17th century, and meets a frontiersman named Jeremy Coe. And Jeremy Coe found the Batcave and used it as a place to hide from them engines.
It was a different time.
It was simpler then. So when he wanted to go out,
And by simpler, we mean racist. But yes, please go on.
when he wanted to go out and he wanted to be safe, oh, Jeremy would change out of the whole Davy Crockett motif and dress as an Indian. And in that way, Batman, who went back in time, is like, he's like me.
All right.
Got
Racist
identities. And you're just like, who wrote this? But whatever.
Yeah. Okay. That's one.
Much simpler time. All right. Then there's a character in Batman who's made a ton of appearances. And in 2010's The Return of Bruce Wayne, they introduced Vandal Savage. So Vandal Savage was basically an immortal and same time period, basically. And well, actually, it's prehistoric times because at this time he's a Neanderthal, right? So his cult, basically his tribe, lives in the Batcave, and they see Batman. Batman's wearing his outfit, and they start worshiping as a god. He ends up leaving his cowl there. He goes back into the future, fly style, goes down to the Batcave and sees that his cowl is still hanging there. So that's number 2. You've got that as an option.
All right.
So number 3 is Tomahawk. Now, Tomahawk appears to be the most boring comic strip that's ever been written. Existed from the 40s to the 60s.
What time frame is that supposed to be like? I see looks like a prehistoric man and
17th century. So this is Revolutionary War era. He's considered to be like a hero of the Revolutionary War. His comic book arcs included things like meeting Davy Crockett and, you know, meeting with George Washington and fighting. I don't know who said this was going to be a good idea. But anyway,
in the bad start, but yeah,
as a side piece, he actually discovers the Batcave when he's tracking a giant bat, and it's just alluded to that it's the Batcave. No additional information.
Okay, all right.
So, and then finally, we have the Underground Railroad, which is Dark Knight Rises. It's also been since referenced in the comic books that the purpose of the Batcave was originally for the Wayne family to hide slaves that were escaping north. But I don't know who came up with that story, but if you're familiar with how the Civil War laid out, if you're in Boston, you're good. You made it.
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
There's no impression there.
There's no reason to go any further north. Here's some iterations of the Batcave, everywhere from the 1966 to present. The Batcave is unique in that there are some elements that most people who aren't comic book nerds might not notice, and that's the trophy room that includes
the T-Rex.
The T-Rex is one, the giant penny's the other, and then the Joker giant card is the third. And those have existed since the 1940s in the Batcave. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. So most of those are harken back to Batman number 10 under Detective Comics 10, and then moving forward from there. But they have been carried in almost every generation. Fascinating to me to see these iterations. And of course, you have the Dark Knight series where at one point moves out of the Batcave, and then he goes to Wayne Corporation or whatever, the Wayne Foundation building. That actually happens in the comic books as well, where at one point, Dick Grayson, who's terrible, decides that he's going to go off to college. Him and Alfred decide that Wayne Manor's too big for them, and then they end up moving all of their equipment into the Wayne Foundation building, and that's kind of like a nod to it within the Dark Knight trilogy.
Got it.
Fantastic.
Oh my Lord, what's going on here? Not too secure. Oh yeah.
So there is a security system for the Batcave. All of it is stuff that's available today. Now, some of the facilities that are in the Batcave have been removed since, right? So originally it had like a gymnasium so Dick Grayson could jump around, you know, like I'm not gonna say it. Anyway, so you could jump around. They had a cage room where they could practice escaping from cages. I have no idea. Whatever. And they also had what was called the interrogation chamber, which was a room lined with mirrors, lights, sounds, and effects designed to break
somebody
down. That sounds like a violation of a couple of international treaties.
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
Got a waterboarding table.
Yeah.
Shock therapy.
It doesn't make any appearances on anything past 1970s. But
Go
what I've done
figure.
for you, for your benefit, is to highlight only about 20 of the over 60 villains who have found the Batcave and broken into it. It is ridiculous to me that you have this Batcave and virtually everybody from Two-Face, Joker, Poison Ivy, Ra's al Ghul, his daughter, freaking Catwoman,
the Turtles.
yeah, Mancat, Donatello, like all of these people found their way into the Batcave at some point, and you're like, dude, just move. And the Joker obviously also found his way there. What I found fascinating is that the Joker actually knows what Batman's identity and just doesn't see any value in revealing it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great
it's a part of his own identity too.
Yeah, it's a great issue that kind of highlights that, where he was like, "Oh, you kept it." So
right.
That's it for the Batcave, I think.
Okay. Well, you're going to close this out, so sorry. I was trying to balance it out a little bit more, but that's how it ended. So, okay. Last thing is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. The reference is, if someone posted something hateful about Artemis or her foundation, I found them and killed their avatar. If someone posted a racist meme about H or a video attacking Shoto's work, I found them and killed their avatar, usually right after I asked them the rhetorical question, who run Bartertown? That's the best I got. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I think this concludes the trilogy. We've now spoken about Mad Max, Road Warrior, and Beyond Thunderdome. We haven't done the most recent remake of it, but yeah, we've covered all of them from the 80s. So take it away, Mad Max.
So this takes place 15 years after the Road Warrior. So this isn't going to be a traditional synopsis because we kind of know what's going on. It's interesting. So to me, that if you look at the Road Warrior, if you look at the very first movie, that's not post-apocalyptic, right? That is just stuff's going bad. This movie takes place after what would be considered post-apocalyptic. Mm-hmm. So the plot line is pretty straightforward. It's a post-nuclear Australia. Max Rokatinsky goes to Bartertown in Wasteland. He fights the body of Krang's android body blaster, eventually being outcast and finding the Australian Lord of the Flies, who is trying to retreat. And that's the short version of this movie. This movie, if you did not know, was not originally intended to be a Mad Max film. Somebody had come up with this. We're going to take this whole Australian Lord of the Flies thing and run with it. And
they shoehorned it right into Mad Max.
Yeah, they were like, well, what other Australian movies do we have? And somebody said, well, we got
Crocodile Dundee.
We got Gallipoli. We got Crocodile Dundee and Mad Max. Let's do the third one. So that's how you got this. It's the first in the Mad Max trilogy to be funded by U.S. dollars. And, of course, those U.S. producers said, I got an idea.
Tina Turner.
Because nothing says
post-apocalypse
like music by Tina Turner. And look, Tina Turner was huge, and the songs in this movie did great on Billboard. But ultimately, if you look at all four of these movies, including the most recent, this music doesn't make any sense in this movie. Not at all. But I think Tina Turner does a pretty dang good job in this film, of bringing authenticity to the character. Is well done. Any first thoughts about this movie, Albert?
It was a favorite of mine as a kid, primarily for Master Blaster. That was the coolest character growing up. Anytime you put somebody on your shoulders, inevitably the joke would come out, Master Blaster, and, playing in the pool or just doing that. I have a lot of fond memories of this movie. I always enjoyed the fight scene, the actual Thunderdome scene, and the rubber bands and jumping around and all that. It was pretty tense. Even as a kid, I watched it, as part of homework for this one, but it's got some good moments. I think the movie loses me halfway now as an adult. Like, I used to like the Lord of the Flies bits and pieces once it gets to that point, but it's far less interesting to me now than the first half of the movie. Like, once he gets out there and meets them, it's just, I don't know. It's not the same kind of movie. It almost feels like two different movies, but that's my opinion.
Because most reviewers, that is where they split on the film. That the front end is very good. When he gets out with the kids, it turns into this, did you like the kids or did you not like the kids?
Right.
And there are some reviewers that sit there and go, I love the idea that they tried to create a language as and a vocal inflection of how these kids spoke based on the world they were living in, where other people were like, oh, that was kind of corny that they did that. But I lean on the side of, I pretty much liked it. This whole movie to me this is by far the funniest of the films. And if it gets criticism for anything, it's that it's probably lighter in that regard than most of the movies are.
I think it
And
was more accessible though too.
oh yeah. So there were parts that were crazy about this movie that are difficult to hang on to if you're just watching it for the first time. Like you see in the upper right hand corner where he's wearing that freaking Mardi Gras headpiece.
Yep.
That is his punishment after he fails to kill Blaster in the Thunderdome. So, what's the saying they say in this movie?
Which one? There's a lot of them. 2-man enter, 1-man leaves.
No,
Bust the deal, face the wheel.
that's it. Bust the deal, face the wheel. So I've got the wheel on there, and it shows you what all the different punishments are. Whether it's spin again, which that sucks that that's even an option. But, like, there's so many things here. And so, do you remember in the film what he lands on?
It was a word I don't remember. It was like gorg or grog or
gulag. So do you
gulag,
know what
yeah, that's it.
Gulag is? The most famous gulags, of course, being in the former USSR.
It's not a dish. Oh, no, it's goulash. That's goulash. I'm kidding. No, a gulag. Yeah, I mean it came up. Okay, so in all fairness, like I didn't know that what it meant until about a year ago when they were talking about Trump and the gulags and all that stuff.
So I would say that when I think of the former Soviet Republic, quite a bit of discussions about the gulags in Siberia, right? That's what I remember the most. These forced internment camps, labor camps, where they would send political prisoners. So typically a gulag, like the punishment that he was assigned, would be associated with a forced labor camp, not shoving a giant head on top of his head
and slapping him
out to the desert. What does that have to do with gulags? Like that, to me, that part of the movie does not make a lot of sense. And so does the whole Jebediah versus the gyro captain. You may remember the actor who played the gyro captain in the right-hand side there. He plays a character with what I'm assuming is his son, right? So Jebediah is there. He's got a completely different name. They act like they don't know one another. And there is quite a bit of conspiracy. No, I won't say conspiracy, but there's a lot of debate online as to whether those are the same character.
Well, yeah, and the movie portrays them as like they don't know each other, like neither one knows each other, but it's almost like in your face that, hey, right at the very beginning, guess who's back? Look, he's flying. It's all, even the way it's shot. It's like do you have any insight as to why they did that?
Only that this actor is a famous Australian actor in this movie, right? So
really,
yeah, he's like apparently it's a big deal there.
Huh.
And I think there's other nonsense in here. Like there's a part where the one character you see in the upper left hand is he's on a hand cart on the railroad track, and after everyone takes off in the train, he runs off and catches up with them. Now, I'm a bit of a math guy. In a hand cart, if you has the average speed of 5 to 7 miles an hour sustained, and maybe could peak out at 10, but somehow caught this train and all of these cars hauling butt across the desert, that can't happen. You're going to just have to suspend your
man, but it looks cool. That's like a very memorable scene too.
When
it plows right into it.
Crazy. But
George Miller, who directed this one?
That's a good question.
It wasn't Barry Manilow, was it? No, I'm kidding.
Barry Manilow is associated with something in this movie, but
I know it was good.
It wasn't Pig Killer. I know that.
Beyond Tired. No, Beyond Thunderdome. Why is this show still going on?
Exactly.
Thunderdome. Yeah. It was Miller, wasn't it?
I think you're right. I think it was.
Yes, directed by George Miller. Yeah. And George Ogilvy had a I guess he did something as well. Produced by George Miller, written by George Miller, Terry Hayes. Yeah. So I mean, it was authentic, at least from that perspective, that they had the main dude on there.
Yeah, originally Mad Max was going to die at the end of it. So we've got some crazy connections here. Like we already talked about, the whole deal with this dude being the
It's the
same
same
character.
guy.
Yeah, and then in the modern remake, they also have this little nod to him being on one of the vehicles to just say, "Oh, did he die? Was he killed?" And then there's a question as to why he didn't kill uh, Blaster. Like there was no reason for him not to kill him. That dude was trying to kill him the whole thing. And one of the theories of why he wasn't killed was that it reminded him of a character from the first Mad Max movie who was mentally challenged.
Oh, right. They had him strapped on that, whatever it was.
That's in the other movie, right? So
Yeah.
So in the other movie, it's one of those rare occasions where the same actor played two different roles. Apparently, this is common in Australia. So this dude was in those two movies playing different characters. But again, there's a lot of debate online as to whether the character who played the guy in the first movie was also the guy that was strapped to that Hordes van in the second.
Yeah.
It's
I always
crazy.
saw him sparing Blaster's life because later on he would meet children as well. Like there was something, I think they were trying to tie the two together, the innocence of youth.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, agreed completely.
But what do I know?
So, things that the takeaways other than that for me for this film are, I think the justice system for Bartertown is ineffective. This whole 2 minute or one man leaves creates an environment where I guess the strongest dude's always right. It's like when you played basketball back in the day and you would shoot free throws to see if you were fouled or not.
Yeah.
And that didn't tell me whether you fouled me. It tells me whether I'm shooting free throws. There's another outside conspiracy theory that has to do with the new films, which is Nux versus Screw Loose, and both of them have similar face paint. One of them's one of the kids, and then one of them's from the modern.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah,
that those two guys are actually the same character. That's a fascinating one to me because people go in depth about how the timeline works and why a character like his wouldn't be interested in going back to Sydney and eventually goes out and is found by that group and becomes part of that clan. It's plenty of questions in this movie for sure.
Jumpin' Jesus. That's what Master says. Is it Master? Somebody says that. Jumpin' Jesus. I think it is.
Yeah.
What do you got going on here?
So I think it's our responsibility, Albert, to occasionally just drop some knowledge on people about something associated with the film. And this is about Richard Amsel. Richard Amsel is the person who did the art for this film. And this was the last film art that he did, most famously known for all the films that you see here.
Wow.
He did the art for. So one of my favorites, so obviously freaking Buck Rogers. I know Buck Rogers.
What the heck? Raiders?
That's not Buck Rogers. Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon's there, yeah, but okay.
Sting, Dark Crystal, Apocalypse Now, Chinatown. This guy wasn't active a long time, but this guy was, to your point earlier, discovered by Barry Manilow. So he started his career at the young age of 22. There was this nationwide talent contest to figure out who was going to do the art for Hello Dolly. This nationwide
Star Search?
Yeah, Star Search for apparently movie poster art. And this guy ended up winning. So he's considered one of the most prolific artists of the 80s, even though his career was really short. His work doing portraits have been featured, continue to be shown at the Smithsonian. So Lily Tomlin's one of his most famous, and I've got a couple there for you. Elvis, Nancy Reagan, Katharine Hepburn, Ingrid Bergman, Johnny Carson, Tom Selleck, Frank Sinatra, John Travolta, Clark Gable, Lucille Ball. And he drew these in about 2 days. So the ones from Raiders are his most famous. He did the first 2 Raiders films. It's pretty well understood that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg each own one of those and keep them at his house, at their houses.
Yeah.
Sadly, he died from complications from AIDS in 85. His last completed work was shown there at the bottom of the TV guide that's got Tom Brokaw and the rest of the newscast, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, for TV Guide. Less than 2 weeks later, he had passed. So great artist. Just want to put a name to some of the work that we see and we probably have in our houses on some DVD covers.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, that is interesting.
Young. Passed young, too.
Okay. Well, let's transfer to something not interesting.
This is super interesting. I've been waiting this whole podcast to talk about this. And so for those that don't know, Bartertown is really built on this society that is using pig feces and poop, methane gas to create a fuel source that they can use to sustain themselves. In fact, the character Pig Killer in the movie is actually imprisoned for killing one of the pigs to turn them into bacon, which is what I would do. But you can't take your fuel manufacturing source and turn it into bacon in Bartertown because it's going to give you a life sentence, which is like 3 to 4 years if you're in the Mad Max universe. So I thought what I would do is, again, Albert, kick a little knowledge to you and let you know whether or not would this society work. Could you do this? All right. So let's talk about feces for a minute. So, feces is composed of a number of different substances, but in terms of the waste byproducts, we're really talking about ammonia, nitrous oxide, and hydrogen sulfide. So we know, as AOC will tell you, that these byproducts are incredibly bad for our environment for a number of different reasons. In fact, research has shown that people that live populations near industrial farms suffer from chronic asthma, respiratory problems, immune suppression. And contrary to popular belief, this is not a predominant cause of climate change, right? It's actually burps, not farts or poo that are.
Right, you're done. That's the end of the show. I'm going to end it right there. You jumped the shark, and we're not jumping sharks on this show. Once you start dropping burps and farts and poops, we're done. We're at 2 hours and 12 minutes. I'm not going to let you continue. I'm sorry. But thank you, though. So is it possible?
Oh, short version? Yes.
Okay, that's all you had to say. Thank you, Wilkins, Dr. Will Wilkins, for that. Your brevity. Appreciate it.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. Okay. I always wondered why they didn't use like wild hogs. Why did they use like farm animal pigs instead of like wild hogs? Not that it would make a difference, but
no
who
idea.
knows?
It's probably easier to control. But there are animals. I don't want to get into it, but there's animals that would be far more effective at producing that, including humans, right? Like if that's what we do. Yeah, I don't know. We're pooping too.
Toddlers are good. Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for the show. We got one review. Thank you. I haven't had a chance to read this from Dev Sibwara. It says, I'm home. 5-star review. There couldn't be a better companion to one of the most creative, visionary books ever. I love how knowledgeable Albert is. And I'm sure she meant Will too, but she says, I love how knowledgeable Albert is and how he fills us in on the backstories and the nitty gritty details. I never got to play Atari or play Galaga at an arcade, but now I feel like I was there. I can't. And then it cut off there. So yeah. So thank you for the 5-star review. Very humbling. And again, apologies for just now getting around to being able to get that up and talk about it. Definitely appreciate it. All right. So really now this will do it for this show. Next week, it's probably going to be a lighter show, although I thought this would only be an hour show, an hour and a half. And here we are at the 2:13 mark. But we've only got a couple pop culture references in chapter 3. There's Sting, Madonna, and there's a Macross reference. And I'll need to go back and look, but there may not be any more than that. So it's going to be pretty thin in terms of the pop. So I'm sure we'll find a way to stretch this out, though, as we always do. Will, you hung in there. Thanks for being here tonight.
Always a pleasure.
With that, I guess we'll see you guys next week, and hopefully you'll join us. views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.